welcome to New Game Plus. I'm Tim, I'm joined by Kirsty. Hi.
I'm feeling intrigued because you've got your T-shirt is very relevant for this week.
Natus Vincere, Born to
Win. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, it all
Born
makes
for
sense
Victory
to me now.
or something
yeah,
like that.
That's what Vincere means, yeah.
So we'll be looking at the free-to-play documentary later in our movie segment. So very exciting. Get to see Dendi.
Dendi!
Some amazing hits. Yes,
yeah, see, I can be cool. I know some of these like Dotas and stuff like that. But some of the other cool stuff we have for you, keeping, I guess, on a non-gaming theme, is we've got some interviews with the guys who are at Square Sounds Melbourne. And they're travelling everywhere. They're actually going to be in Japan later in the year, which is really exciting for us because we're going to be in Japan at the same time. Yay! So we'll be able to see them there, which would be really awesome.
Yeah, and we're moving on with your cosplay segment as well.
Yes, we've got more sewing going on. I mean, gosh, BAM is getting really close now, so we've really got to start actually making these work. And
getting those costumes done and dead or alive, then it could all happen.
I know, it's going to be so exciting. I'm so pumped.
But our big review for this week is Infamous Second Son.
Now, this is one for you, isn't it?
Very exciting. PS4 exclusive.
Yay, we finally can use a PS4.
Yeah. Nah, we'll find out what I think of it later on in the episode. But first up, we have Ding Dong
Rumpus. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Shaney, if there was an award for the silliest video game name in existence, I'm pretty sure it would go to Ding Dong Rumpus.
Jing Bong.
Wait, was it?
I don't know.
Hingen Dingen Durgan? No, it was Danganronpa for the PlayStation Vita. So basically, it's a 2010 PSP upscaling on the PlayStation Vita of a murder mystery visual novel.
It was only a Japan game, so it's the first release for the Western audience. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, you jump into the role of Makoto Negi. So he's an ordinary student who gets invited into Hope's Peak Academy, a school for very prestigious students. But unfortunately, things get pretty awry, and you find out there's a lot of murders and a lot of deception happening.
That's like the basis of the story, and it is a very story-based driven game. It is a visual novel. You're always going to be very focused on the story, and it's done very well. Like character development, you feel for the characters. Yes,
characters are very relatable. They're very lovable too. I love every single one of them.
And the presentation itself is very, very nice. It's kind of a mix between, I guess, Phoenix Wright and maybe Persona 4, I guess.
Yeah, I say the presentation itself is probably the best part of the game. But anyway, gameplay-wise, as you were saying before, it's a fantastic segue. It's very much Phoenix Wright. So the game is split into 3 segments. So daily life, which you're allowed to befriend your fellow classmates in a very Persona-like structure, and you gain abilities as well as exposition from them. And then there's deadly life, where murders happen, and you actually acquire evidence by investigating crime scenes and things like that. And then you use class trial, which you use that evidence to prove your innocence in court.
That's where I guess the crux of the gameplay comes in. It's very much kind of mini-game based as per se. It's not as hard, I guess, as you'd say, as a Phoenix Wright kind of game.
It's much more fast-paced, though.
It is. That's the other thing about this game. The pacing is done very, very well.
It's excellent. I couldn't agree more. Anyway, so everything about it as well. Like, I mean, the game it's not exactly that hard, but for visual novel, people that want to get into visual novels, purists will already play it. But it's fantastic as an entry point. The maniacal antagonist, everything about it is great. So be sure to play it. Otherwise, Monokuma will pretty much come and punish you.
Now, I just don't know how to say the name for this one. It's
Danganronpa. No, hang on. It's a mixture of all these sounds that sound like Ding Dong Rumpus or something. Yes, but this game, I think
visual novels are not really my thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to go somewhere really controversial with that. Like, I thought this was going to turn into like a Dear Esther kind of argument of visual novels aren't real games. And I was like,
well, they're not. It's a visual novel. It's not exactly a game. Where's the gameplay in it? Turning pages. Oh, such a difficult gameplay mechanic.
I know, but it's still really interesting. I don't know. I guess sometimes for a lot of like Japanese storytelling and those kind of deep elements, you may not get that in a game, or that you may not get the exact experience in a game. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to convince you, am I?
No.
Now, Crazy Taxi gets announced for the iPad, and I'm a little bit skeptical because, as we know, touch controls But it turns out that it's probably one of the best versions of the game that you can play. So it has your traditional modes, you know, your arcade, there's time trials, there's like challenges, there's lots of, it's a really well expanded version of the game. Best of all, it happens to keep the, how do I put it delicately, awesomely tacky Offspring Bad Religion soundtrack. There's no more, you know, Take Me to the Original Levi's Shop, but it still manages to maintain the music. And I think that was one of the big things. Realistically, when you break Crazy Taxi down to its core, it's a simple arcade, like, fetch quest with really fast-paced music to keep you involved. If that's what you're going into this with the idea of, and the controls handle really well as well, which is, again, the biggest concern with iPads, you've pretty much got exactly what you're after. It's much better than the PC and Xbox version, just because with the music behind it, you feel like you're driving fast. All of the speed, the power-ups work still, so you know, the speed boost, the drifting, everything is pretty much a one-to-one clone. Plus they've added challenge modes, plus they've added all this other stuff. It's effectively the best version of the game that you could ask for that's not, you know, on the Dreamcast. And as much as I love the Dreamcast and I'd love to break it out all the time, if I can play Crazy Taxi in the bus and earn some crazy money, I know what I'd rather do.
Well, welcome back, guys. We are in week 3 of New Cosplay Plus, and I'm, of course, joined by the lovely Danny. How are we?
Well, thanks.
Now, of course, this week we started to actually cut out our material. So we've already talked about the importance of material. Now it's time to talk about the importance of patterning.
That's
so
right.
This week we focused on the cloak itself. So this is Bass's cloak. The reason we did it was it's the biggest.
Yes, it is, yes.
So then it's also going to be, I guess, the easiest one to really pin together. So we did use a pattern, and this is what a pattern looks like. Nice big brown sheets of crinkly paper. Now, they do recommend that you iron the patterns before you use them. What do you think about this?
Look, I think if you're using a very firm fabric or a tight-fitting costume, I think it's well worth making sure you iron it. That way you're not getting any uneven spaces. But if you're doing a stretch or something like this, I think it's going to be a waste of time.
Exactly, and particularly because it isn't form-fitting in the slightest. It's not really worth it.
No.
But the thing to remember is it is important to be relatively careful with your cutting, I believe. Right. Because particularly to do with little notches of where things are supposed to meet.
That's right.
Because what happens is you get lazy, and then you get tired, and then you get busy.
That's right.
And then you get to the end.
At 3 a.m. in the morning, you need something to help you out.
And these notches tend to also be quite consistent across the different brands as well. So if you're mixing your patterns, that'll be quite good.
Makes it a lot easier.
Now, with the actual pinning to the fabric, too many pins is not a bad thing.
No, never.
No, because again, once you actually start cutting particularly stretchy fabric, it can get very difficult to maintain a strong line.
That's right.
I think. So luckily we've got the Lycra, so we are going to start getting into that stretchy fabric pretty soon, and that's going to be the real test.
Yes.
But now that we've started really cutting out our patterns, the next part is pinning. Now, with the cloak, we're pretty okay, aren't we?
Yeah, we're doing quite well.
But with the actual, any of the other clothing, this is where dressmaking doll is really going to come in. Being able to tailor it and also being able to measure the person themselves.
Exactly.
How hard is it to do someone else's costume? Give us some insight.
You need them there, basically, unless you've got all the measurements and a specially made form for them. You need to do a lot of to and fro measuring as you go.
And the hard thing for us as well is we're actually doing a guy. So as in, we do our own.
And different body shape.
So we don't even have a male dressmaking doll. So Jason's going to become our pincushion for the next couple of weeks. But thank you so much, Danny.
Not a problem.
We will see you next week with Putting It All Together. Ooh.
Yay!
Now, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Nathan Anthony, I guess long-standing Square Soundsian. You've been here for a long, long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been in Chip for a while, and so Square Sounds has been close to my heart.
So how did it actually come about? Like, how did Square Sounds begin?
So there was a festival previously called Blip Festival I've been running since 2006, and it's like an international chip music festival that's run in like New York, Tokyo, and in Europe. And that came to a close in 2012. So in the aftermath of that, a few different festivals popped up. One of them was Square Sounds, which was run by Eugene and Christy, and a couple guys from Japan as well. So they're doing 2 different festivals in Australia and in Japan.
So you've come all the way from England to join us here at Square Sounds?
Sheffield in the UK, so yeah, quite a journey.
I mean, are you excited to be down here at a chiptunes festival, you know, in the back end of Melbourne to play what you love doing?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course, like definitely. I mean, I think 5 years ago when I started, I never kind of thought, you know, from making music on Nintendo DS, I never thought it'd kind of get to this stage. And yeah, it's yeah, I love it. I really do love it.
Are you still happy, like doing chiptunes? Did you start anywhere else and come into chiptunes, or is this kind of your first foray into that field?
Well, I started making electronic music because I just couldn't find the right people to start a band. So I thought, right, I'll do this. You know, I can rely on myself, and yeah, it's loads easier. And then yeah, I kind of messed about with this program. I got more and more kind of into it, and it got more and more serious, and then it just kind of escalated and kind of snowballed it into, you know, from playing like a small kind of theatre like near Sheffield. Which was weird because everyone sat down and playing hard electronic music, to, you know, coming all the way to Melbourne and playing a festival dedicated to it. So
that's very, very cool. And I mean, you've played at a lot of them. Do you still enjoy it? You're a special guest at this one. You're excited to get back up there?
Oh, absolutely, man. It's just a really fun time. The crowd is really into it and passionate, and, you know, everyone's just, you know, getting into the awesome music.
Do you find that it just goes beyond the gamer kids? Like, you know, it is still pretty hard electro when it's all said and done. Do you think it expands beyond just the gamers in the crowd?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there is an element of nostalgia to what we do, being, you know, chiptune, but some of the music you're going to hear tonight is just really, really hard, and it wouldn't be out of place in a club.
So you make a lot of your sounds on the hardware?
Yeah, completely from scratch, using a program made by Korg called Korg DS10. It's based on like the MS-10 synthesizer. So yeah, basically just making all your sounds from scratch using that. You can't put samples into it, so it's all done like on the program itself.
What's your favorite? I guess what's your favorite piece of kit that you use? Like, you just go the traditional like straight up route, or is there some kind of special toy you bring in?
I'm actually a kind of faker in a lot of ways. I do a lot of my stuff in hardware. In software, using a plugin called Chip Sounds by a company called Plug, and that emulates a lot of different sound chips. But yeah, I mean, I've seen people use Commodore 64s and DMG, like the Game Boys, and
I'm waiting for the dot matrix printers to come out.
Yeah, you know, I've seen people do stuff like that on YouTube before. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
You've got the DS involved in the mix. If you could add any other like platform system, anything like that, what would you chuck in there?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've been kind of experimenting with like LSDJ, what a lot of the guys use for the original Game Boy. But I used to throw like some circuit bent toys in there, so like, you know, breaking kids' toys, getting strange sounds, and then yeah, I throw that in there as well. I think it's another thing that people look at the crowd and like, what the hell is he doing?
Like, yeah, next stop, Harley gets arrested at Toys R Us.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, I go, you know, round Toys R Us, pressing buttons and smashing things. Oh yeah, this is great. I do get a lot of funny looks from people.
Yeah, it's fine. It's good. Whatever. It's good, yeah. Look, good luck with the festival. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
Well, I've roped in another person. More Dota.
Because you're a big Dota player.
Yes. And I'm a big Dota fan of this sort of content. So
I'm not.
Yeah.
But I like movies.
Yeah.
So we should explain. So let's explain what it is. It's free to play. It's a documentary about Dota.
Yes. Obviously, looking at the first international, the big tournament by Valve, it was really such small tournaments up until this point, and then Valve come out and do a $1.6 million tournament for the new game, which was in its early beta stages, and they bring in all these pro teams from original Dota, from HON, and yeah, this is the story of three very talented individuals.
Now, there's got to be some people who are watching who are going to go, or immediately going to be very interested in what you just said.
Yep.
There are other people who won't care, and I would have been one of those people who don't care. But the great thing about documentaries, good documentaries, is they make you care about something you didn't care about before. I didn't care about Dota, but this was an excellent documentary. Explained Dota, explained competitive gaming. It showed you these characters, these players. It showed you a glimpse into their lives and why Dota was so important to them.
Yeah, and it really does portray that feeling and wants you to care as well. And this is coming from guys that make games. They don't make movies. This is just a couple of guys at Valve who have spent, admittedly, a few years on this, and I think it's turned out really well.
Yeah, I mean, the people they've chosen to follow are really interesting. They raised the tension about who's going to win, why it's so important to them. It explains a lot of things about Dota, like drafting. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
and they explain it about picking the heroes and why that's important and why that is such an essential skill.
Yeah. And while it does explain all of that, it's not pandering to people who might already know what Dota is and play Dota regularly. So if you play Dota and not necessarily follow the competitive scene, you'll get a good idea about what happens by watching this documentary. And if you are fully involved in the community, you've already watched it and enjoyed it because you're a fanboy of Dendy and you follow everything he does.
Dendy!
Yes, but I learned a lot about these players just watching this documentary, and it really does show that it is hard sometimes for these professional gamers to make a living, to prove themselves to their families and others.
They have parents who tell them they game too much and they should go to school and study more.
Yeah.
You don't need to be a Dota fan to play it. It's a great documentary, definitely worth watching, and it's free.
My mother always told me, you can never be too careful in this place. That just because you couldn't see something didn't mean it wasn't there. Hidden in the darkness, watching, waiting. There's something out there, something that won't stay hidden forever. One day soon, she'd say, we'll run out of time. I never knew exactly what she meant, but now I'm afraid. We're all about to find out.
No.
Please, stop! I don't want to die!
I'm trying to figure out who killed you.
Be careful out there. You never know what's waiting around the corner.
Well, Murdered Soul Suspect, I don't think we get a lot of information about the game
No.
with that trailer, but it looks intriguing.
It looks really interesting. So I think the premise is that you are a cop, a former cop, and you were brutally murdered by a masked killer, and you have to find your killer, and you do that by influencing the lives of the people still alive and would know. So I think that's really interesting. Like, again, but the mechanics aren't really demonstrated here, so I don't know exactly how they're going about this.
An amnesia game when you don't have any way to defend yourself or like attack anybody. You could be like a realistic Cluedo.
See, that'd be really fun. Or like, guess who? It's like, does he have glasses? No. I don't know. I would be interested to see more about this game because from just this alone, I thought it was a bit of a Last of Us with the girl at the start, and then now it's kind of turned into something a little bit different.
Well, Sucker Punch has brought out the heavyweights. Yes.
I mean, PS4's out. They're going to release their new iteration in the Infamous series, their first next-gen offering with Infamous Second Son.
Now, I bought a PlayStation 4 for this game. I was very keen for it. I loved the previous games on the PlayStation 3. Fantastic games, but does this live up to the previous games?
Well, I would say with bated breath that it definitely does. I mean, it is more Infamous, but I mean, if you're really gonna argue about that, you really should be playing the Infamous games. So anyway, we start off. You step into the role of Delson, who is a Native American delinquent who unfortunately absorbs the powers of some escaped convicts.
Yes.
He becomes a conduit, and he quickly finds out, hey, this is really cool. I could be a superhero. But then he finds out the harsh realities of being a superhero and the consequences that come with it.
Of course. Now, tracking down these other escaped convicts, he wants to absorb all these new powers, and that, of course, is the big difference from the previous games, is you can have multiple powers. First, you start off with smoke, then you get neon, video, as well as concrete powers later on in the game. So you end up having to track down this head of this militarized sort of police force that are tracking down these conduits and locking them away. So you can either be the hero or the villain.
So it's still got the two-faced moral system going. It feels a little bit half-baked, but I must say though, the game is presented really, really well. I mean, the game is surprisingly well detailed. The mocap faces, it looks fantastic as a complete package.
Yeah, certainly the animation and the colors in all of the moves. Neon is especially my favorite.
That's pretty.
Going around at night time, it really brings life to a city that doesn't have a lot of life, because you're walking around the city and people will just kind of lean back against poles and they're not doing anything. So the city isn't very alive, but the gameplay makes up for it.
There was actually one lady that yelled out, "Have my babies," when I went down the good path. So I thought, was that good or a bad thing? Anyway, we'll jump straight into gameplay. Gameplay, it just plays like any other Infamous game out there. The melee still seems to be a little bit wonky, and you can only target one character at a time, so you used a lot more range stuff.
Yeah, I think maneuverability is something that they've really improved on in this game. Certainly with all the different abilities having their own maneuvering style, it just adds a lot to the game.
I must think a little bit differently though, because with the parkour, it still seems very buggy and a little bit off at most times. But however, the powers do counteract with that. So you've got one of the Neon abilities is being able to dash everywhere, dashing up walls vertically, horizontally, and that's actually a much better option. Yeah,
it certainly is. And playing around with these abilities, as well as the super ability, is very impressive once you build up that karma streak and you can wipe out entire groups of enemies. It's a lot of fun.
There's a nice sense of momentum in combat. The only thing that does get me though is the fact that I mean the powers, you can't actually hot swap them. You actually have to go absorb, smoke, or if you find a neon light, you got to absorb from there. It does break down the pacing of battle a little bit, but I'll let that slide.
I am okay with that, because it certainly brings different plays of style, because each ability has their own version of their maneuverability, their melee, their range shot. So it all works out in the end, I think. And it was a really impressive game, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so hit up Infamous Second Son for a shockingly good time.
So does this mean he's famous? Or is he still
He's famous
infamous?
For a bad reason. Or for a good reason.
I was going to say, does that... Oh, this is really confusing. I don't like this. Now we're going to have English lessons. Yes. Yeah, now this is the interesting part, the good or evil. Yes. And you chose...
Good,
as
always. But that said, Infamous games are always meant to be played twice. One for good, one for evil. I think evil will be easier because you can do comet drops from skyscrapers and not worry about civilians.
Yay! But the weird thing that I got from this game was the Uncanny Valley got really extreme here. That they looked so...
Some of the faces,
the faces got really, really sick. I'm like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. You know, you get awkward.
Yeah, it's still a very pretty game, but it certainly is getting to that point where faces get to almost too realistic and gets a bit weird.
Yeah, it gets a bit weird to look at. But well, at least we're showing some of obviously the graphical capability of the PS4 at the same time, which is a good thing, I suppose.
Yes. And a great game along with it. So.
Yes, exactly. Well, let's move on to next week.
Yes.
Now, next week, of course, is a bit of a big episode, maybe for some of our Japan fans out there. Yep. We are, of course, looking at Final Fantasy X HD Remake.
10/10/2.
Hang on. Yeah, it's like Danganronpa. It's this really, really long...
Yes, too many numbers, too many letters, too many everything with Final Fantasy
But it is good to see, because Final Fantasy X was... I don't know, I didn't enjoy it, I got bored by it, but I certainly know a lot of people who loved that game, so the HD remake certainly is appreciated.
Yeah. HD remakes are always good to come back. If you never played the game, it's always a fresh opportunity at trying out a classic game.
So. Exactly, so we've got that, and we've got some other game reviews coming up for you as well, but let's wrap it up, Tim.
Yep, so visit our website, www.newgameplus.tv.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/NewGamePlusTV.
Follow our Twitters and Instagrams at NewGamePlusTV.
And don't forget to check out our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/NewGamePlusTV.
Thank you, Kirsty.
And thank you, Timmy, and we'll see you guys next week.